Welcome back. This is part 2 of our review of the Chris Watts interrogation. We're exposing what the criminal is too embarrassed to admit to, giving a voice to the victims and credit to some unsung heroes. We covered some of Chris's written statement last time. We covered the shape of his head, and we covered one of the seeds that led to this crime. There's the branches of the aftermath and the evidence that leads down to the trunk of the crime, which leads down to the roots that are hidden underground of what the criminal is covering up. And there's where you find the seeds that led to the crime. I believe he did, like he says most recently in a book to Cheryl Cadle, Letters from Christopher, Cheryl and Cadle. He says that he started planning the crime in a month or two before he actually committed it, and I believe that, but the seeds that led to him planning the crime actually went back years, and that's part of what we're covering here and what he gives away in much of this interrogation that I'm going to point out. He thinks he's concealing it, but compared to the evidence, he gives it away. So I wanted to clarify the comparison I made to a bad American Idol audition, because remember in American Idol, the singer would come in and they'd be interviewed saying, yeah, my friends and family and coworkers all say I'm a great singer, and I sing in the church choir and I sing at the bar every weekend and everybody loves me, so now I'm here to share my talent with the world. And then they get up on stage in front of the judges and the public, and the judges and the public see everything that the friends and the family and the coworkers either didn't see because they care about the person or were too ashamed to admit that they saw and wanted to be nice. We see that this person doesn't belong doing this. They don't look right doing it. They're not who they're pretending to be. And committing this crime is Chris Watts stepping up on that stage. And this interrogation that we're reviewing is the judges finally speaking and telling the performer everything that's wrong with him. Only they're a little smoother and sneakier than the American Idol judges. So that's why we're going over it. We're going to go over some of those seeds and expose what he's too embarrassed to admit to. The next thing that we come to is how Chris mentioned that Shanann's best friend showed up while Chris was at work on the day of the crime. And she had the cops there. That was unexpected. That wasn't part of his plan. And that led to him calling a lot of audibles. And I wonder if Nicole actually knows the magnitude of what she did by showing up and being concerned for her friend and trying to make sure her friend was okay. I wonder if she really knows, because she's an empathic, caring person, and we all wish we can have a friend like her. So she probably, I'm guessing, beats herself up over what she couldn't do instead of congratulating herself over what she did do. But really, she ruined the greatest moment in Chris Watts' life. This was the best accomplishment in his mind that he could have possibly done, and what he thought was a flawless execution. Even more so than Shanann popping his cherry, more so than degrading his family by cheating on his pregnant wife with the mistress and the perverse joy that he got out of that, which is what sociopaths do. They get joy out of degrading people. Even more than those didn't carry the risk that came with getting rid of his family and thinking he can get away with it. He was risking his entire life, his freedom. Everything he would ever do again after that point was on the line with this chance he was taking. This was his greatest accomplishment and worth risking everything for to get it done. And I can just picture, he was in celebration mode that morning after he got rid of his family. He was completely in celebration mode. He was calling up, scheduling a vacation for him and the mistress. He was looking up jewelry. He was listening to the Metallica song that he relates to what he did. He was calling the realtor about selling the house that he thought was too expensive and a waste of money, just riding high on euphoria after what he thought was just a perfect, amazing accomplishment. And I guarantee you, he was looking forward to that drive home to his empty house. He was looking forward to just remember the way he looked in the media interviews where he was out in front of his house and he just had that look on his face like he was sniffing his own farts and thought they smelled like flowers. You know, he's like, Lake. I just want them to be safe. Lake. That I picture him having that face while he was driving home, just so in love with himself and proud of himself. And because Shanann's best friend showed up and had the cops there before he even got home, that just ruined it for him. I can imagine him boiling with anger as he was driving home. And you can even see when he, in the body cam footage from the police officer that was there when he got home, you can just see how much rage he must have been keeping inside as he came up to them, and he just didn't say anything to them. And she completely ruined the greatest moment of Chris Watts' entire life. And she should see that silver lining, at least, in this horrible tragedy. So, some of the audibles he had to call now. Since Nicole Atkinson and the cop were already there and investigating the house, they noticed that what Chris mentions in the interrogation next, it's weird that the doors were locked from the inside, because how could they get out if the doors were locked from the inside? He thought he was going to be home to that empty house, just in complete vacation mode, and he would get to say, well, all the doors were unlocked, so she must have just left. And I guess, like I told you before, the neighbor's security camera didn't catch her coming to the house, so it must not have caught her leaving. And now he has to frantically backtrack and fumble his way through this ridiculous story that she must have snuck out through the open garage door, because the notification on his phone said that garage door left open as I was leaving. So maybe they snuck out and they snuck around back and neighbor Nate's camera didn't catch them. And maybe they escaped over the fence and got into a friend's car that I've never met before. And they got the response it deserves, not even a single follow-up question every time he mentioned it, because it makes no sense. And that was thanks to Nicole Atkinson showing up with the police. That ruined that part of his plan. So now he's just spinning his wheels trying to call audibles. He can't say that the doors were unlocked. He can't get rid of all the stuff that was left in the house that the cops see. So now he has to come up with new excuses for why all that stuff is there. And the best he can do at this point is just, yeah, like what we saw there just didn't make sense. All their stuff is still there and nothing. They're not there. Doors locked from the inside, so maybe she just escaped through the garage door and went out the back. So, good job to Nicole Atkinson on that one. You're a great friend. A little unrelated detail that kind of sets the tone for this interrogation and Chris's lying style and his manner of doublespeak is because he shoehorns this in where he doesn't really need to. He mentions how Detective Baumover shows up, and Graham is like, oh, okay, so he showed up and he wants to like move it along, but Chris doesn't move it along. He sticks on Baumover. Oh, I think I butchered his name. And he says that twice. I butcher his name every time. At least twice. Interesting word choice for a guy that just murdered his entire family. And I think this kind of thing amuses him. I think in his many silent moments, these are the word plays that he's coming up with, that he thinks he's pulling the wool over everyone's eyes. He's saying something that he believes is true that will come off different to the people he's saying it to. So I butcher his name, or I butchered the song. That's a common phrase in the English language. I butchered this, I butchered that. We say it kind of flippantly. But it's interesting that he would say it here when he didn't really need to. On that note, the unfortunate word choice of Decompressing. When Chris mentions that yesterday I thought she was just decompressing somewhere, and he says this many times, I thought she was just decompressing somewhere. And that's more of his doublespeak because Graham Coder, playing along to ensnare Chris into his trap, says, oh, just blowing off steam. And that's how anybody would think to take it from a normal, innocent family man. Decompressing, oh, you mean blowing off steam. But what a sicko like Chris Watts is using it, where it sounds awkward and an unnecessary word choice, because Chris could have said blowing off steam, he chooses to use the word decompressing. Because when a body dies, it releases gases. So he just gets a kick out of referring to his dead wife in a grave releasing gases, decompressing. And this is why it sounds so awkward. And this is why it stands out, because he wouldn't really need to use it. He forces it in, and we can see why, along with Butcher and along with many other examples that come. The pace of this review will pick up when certain elements get repeated. We're not going to go over and repeat the reason for every single element. I might just summarize huge sections where after his cover story has already gone over and then Graham starts to dig into certain parts of it, there's long sections where Chris doesn't really reveal anything new. He just tries to convince that he's a good guy. We can summarize those, and the pace of these reviews will just pick up. So don't think the whole thing's going to be this in detail. And we get into Chris's most infamous word, safe. Some would say like. I credit like to being the mistress's word to use too much. Chris's most infamous word is how much he uses the word safe. I want them to be safe. I was hoping that they would be safe. Now I'm thinking they're not safe. I just want them to be safe somewhere. It's like Butcher and decompressing. He's using a word that... Here's the thing. Everybody has these awful thoughts. Some people want to pretend like they don't think the worst thoughts that can possibly be thought by a human being. But we all do. That's your brain functioning. One part of your brain gives you every possibility that it can come up with based on the information that's going into it. It comes up with every possible scenario. And the other half of your brain chooses what to do with all of that information. So a normal person would take these awful thoughts that we all have and say, what can I do to avoid that happening in my life? Sickos like Chris will take those awful thoughts and think, how can I get away with them? And his way of getting away with them is using words like safe. I want them to be safe. And when Graham goes into, well, what do you think happened? Chris uses it to an awkward degree, as if it wasn't already awkward enough, saying, yesterday I thought she was safe. I thought she was just decompressing somewhere, and I thought she was safe. But now, after all of the law enforcement and detectives and watchdogs and lieutenants, I'm thinking she's not safe. I thought she was safe before everyone was looking into the crime, and now that everyone's looking into the crime, I'm thinking she's not safe. So, of course, how he's thinking that's going to come across to everybody listening who thinks he's just a great singer, so to speak, is that, he cares so much about his family. He wants them to be okay. I hope they're okay so that he can feel better about it. But we can all see that what he means is safe from being discovered. He wants his family to be safe from being found. And now that everyone's looking into it, they're not safe from being found. They might be discovered now. So, awkward. And then we come to what I think of as the Chris Watts rule. Every single time Chris Watts replies in the negative, I wouldn't do this, I didn't say this, I would never do that, I'm not that kind of guy, the opposite is true. Because next, he sets the tone for that by saying, it's freaking me out because I have no idea where they are. And Graham gives him a silence that it deserves because I have no idea where they are. It kind of just closes the door like, I have no idea where they are, so I guess you guys can keep working on it and I'll head home. I have no idea where they are. He knows where they are. Every point on, from here on in, every time he says something, the opposite is true. I don't know where they are. I have no idea where they are. I would never make them go missing. I love them and would never harm them in any way. Every time he says that, with maybe one or two exceptions, the opposite is true. That's the Chris Watts rule in this interrogation. And for almost everything else outside of this interrogation too. So we're getting kind of long again. We'll have to save the next part for part 3. And I hope to see you next time.